good evening. I'm Melisa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. The global shipping industry moves around 80% of world trade, but it's now sailing through the dangerous waters of global political power. Now, is geopolitics shaping or reshaping global shipping? And what does it mean for trade, for prices, and for economic security in 2026? Joining me on the show to discuss all of this is Nazery Khalid, who is a maritime analyst. He's also an adjunct professor at Universiti Malaysia Terengganu and Taylor's University. Nazery, welcome to the show. It's good to have you on. It's been many years since we last had you on the show. COVID was the last time during COVID. And I think that was one major period where the shipping industry was so disrupted.
Indeed.
And now we're back to another key or pivotal point or flashpoint, if I may use that, for the global shipping industry. Before we continue our conversation into what the current industry is like, I'm hoping we can look back in the past year.
Sure.
When you think back about the past year, Nazery, what has actually changed for global shipping? And I do wonder what developments that happened last year might still impact risks and opportunities of 2026.
All right. Okay, first and foremost, Mel, thank you for having me back on the show. It's surely great to be back. I think it was during COVID, as you rightly pointed out.
And not in person, right?
It was exactly on World Seafarers Day that we had that conversation about the plight of seafarers. And obviously, some time has passed. That was a time of really tough times for the maritime industry at that particular point in time when global trade was nearly paralyzed. And when during the movement control order and lockdowns around the world that stopped industries and business activities in the tracks, and also sharply reduced consumer demand for a lot of goods, and that obviously had a very significant impact on the maritime industry, whereby a lot of shipping companies suffered huge losses. Ports, a lot of cargoes were stuck at ports, and a lot of bottlenecks formed along supply chains, which actually took quite a number of years for them to be cleared. And the maritime industry is actually mirroring the changes which are occurring in the world. And it is actually going through a very profound period at the moment, which is underpinned by regulatory aspects, greater focus on ESG, sustainability, ships getting bigger, and world trade growing from year after year, which demands ports, shipping companies to extend capacity, and also players along the supply chain to become efficient, to invest in scalable infrastructures, to put in the manpower and so on, and also to a certain extent, to a high degree of significance, also powered by the application of AI and also Industry 4.0.
So all of those things had been kind of brewing and bubbling, and then now we're seeing the effects of it.
Exactly.
One of the things you said really struck me. You said the shipping industry mirrors the changes the world is going through. And that's, I think, quite a profound statement to say. It's absolutely true, because I am quite curious to see just how exposed the shipping industry is to geopolitical conflict, to a reordering of the global order. Talk to me about the events of last year, from the Black Sea to the Straits of Hormuz. What did that reveal to you about how exposed the global shipping industry is, and what does it do to global trade flows?
All right, I don't use the word profound very loosely, so when I use it, I'm in business, right? And again, as I mentioned, we are at the throes of really huge changes which are driven by geopolitics and also conflicts, wars, reconfiguration of supply chains, emergence of China as one of the leading superpowers, trade tariff wars, which are resulting in a lot of snowball effects affecting production, consumption, distribution of goods, and so on. So with the Trump 2.0 administration introducing tariff wars, have sort of like recalibrating the established order of global production and also distribution of goods, whereby China recently announced the establishment of Hainan as a free port, which really showing its growing confidence and clout as a global economic superpower, and also to capitalize on the MAGA thing about looking inwards. Only 2 days ago we were shocked by U.S. announcing that they're pulling out from about 60-something world institutions and organizations. So this really is going to have a very significant impact on a lot of things, including economy. And as to what you mentioned about the situation with the Ukraine and Russian war, and also the conflict in the Middle East, which spill over to the Straits of Hormuz, whereby some ships, commercial ships, were attacked by Houthi rebels, which are believed to be backed by certain other powers, of course, had a significant impact on the flow of goods and also posed serious threats to the lives of seafarers and also assets. So that has resulted in some shipping companies having to reroute the shipping, their shipping voyages around the Cape of Good Hope in the southern tip of Africa instead of the usual.
So that makes it longer.
Makes it longer. It adds to their cost, and also there was a spillover effect to consumers.
Well, okay. That's actually my question would be then. When those types of flashpoints happen, when there are choke points at the Straits of Hormuz, for instance, or the Black Sea becomes unstable, who pays the price? Who bears the cost? Is it the ship owners? Is it the insurance industries? Is it consumers? Is it governments?
That's a good basic question which needs to be demystified. I think from an economic standpoint, there's a little bit of economic 101 here. Demand for shipping service is what is known in economic terms as derived demand. The demand for shipping services is not directly for the ship, but for the services they perform and for the cargoes they carry. So the greater the demand for the cargoes they carry, including containerized cargoes, bulk cargoes, oil and gas, and other commodities, it will be reflected in the freight rate, which is the cost imposed by shipping lines or ship owners on the cargo that they carry. So obviously, when they have to reroute and take a longer route to get to their final destination from the port of origin to port of destination, they will have to burn more fuel, so they add to the cost.
Right.
They may have to stop at more ports, which will incur them a lot of cost. So inevitably, they will have to pass this cost down to consumers. So at the end of it, the consumers, the end users of the products that they carry, have to bear the brunt of it. So that is something obviously which affects all of us.
So I'm assuming higher insurance premiums, the inefficiencies, the longer routes, are all of that now the new normal for the shipping industry? Is that just what we have to deal with going forward?
Well, yeah, obviously certain routes which are considered as war risk zones will have to, ship owners will have to incur higher costs by going through these routes, because they will have to be they will have to pay more higher premium for that to protect the cargo.
Can I just ask you, who determines shipping routes? And are shipping routes being determined by commercial logic or by geopolitical or security calculations? I do wonder, how are shipping routes determined?
Well, first and foremost, what you mentioned about economic logic and exactly how the flow moves. Ships are basically, as I mentioned to you, servants of global trade. So they go to where the cargo is and where the cargo originates. The purpose is to pick up cargo and to send cargo. So from ports of destination, where there's a lot of cargoes happening. For example, in the case of Malaysia, we have a very prolific amount of cargo coming, for example, from Klang Valley.
Do we have a lot of cargo?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Port Klang is already ranked 10 as the busiest container ports by way of throughput handle, which is around 40 million last year, 14.6 million. And PTP, Pelabuhan Tanjung Pelepas, in my home state of Johor, is also I think ranked around 14th place, and is poised to crack into the list of top 10 busiest ports. So last year alone, about 1 billion TEU, or 20-foot equivalent units of containers, were being shipped around the world. And I mean, just try to wrap your head around the magnitude of 1 billion containers being carried by hundreds and thousands of ships around the world. China alone accounts for about half of the 1 billion. Shanghai port, which is the world's busiest port, handles about 60 million TEUs. So they go to ships will determine shipping voyages will be determined by where the cargoes are, in terms of domestic cargo coming in to be exported to their markets, and also transshipment cargo. In the case of PTP, which handles about 95% transshipment, especially intra-ASEAN containers, the cargoes are basically coming from other parts of the world to be put on smaller ships and then to be distributed to so-called, there's a system called hub and spokes, which is quite fascinating, but needs to be demystified. It is, yeah.
So I'm imagining a wheel, right?
Wheel of a bicycle, our grandfathers rarely a bicycle, exactly like that. So you got the hub port in the middle, the Shanghai port of the world, the Singapore port, the Hong Kong, Busan ports, and big ships will call at these ports because they need to, number one, only big ships can only call at big ports with deep draft and adequate facilities such as cranes and logistics support and so on. And then from then on, they will transship the cargo into smaller ships to be distributed to smaller ports in the region. Actually, much like airline, I think that's a concept which is more familiar. You fly a big plane to a major port, and then for example, from here to, for the sake of discussion, maybe Dubai or London. And from there, you fly to other smaller ports where there are no direct services
connecting
from KLIA.
Flights, right? Connecting flights. So that when you look at the importance, also you're talking about the kind of circle of global trade, right? The endless cycle of global trade and where shipping comes into it. When you look at what's happening in geopolitics today, when you see how global powers are jostling for certain areas, certain countries, how much of that, when you read the news, how much do you think this is related to shipping and shipping routes?
Well, as the adage goes, no shipping, no shopping. So shipping really shipping really is a reflection of, and see how important shipping is. It's everywhere. There's ship in friendship, there's ship in relationship. There's also ship in hardship, by the way. So you can see, the thing about shipping is that people only think about shipping when something disrupts it. Much like when you only think about oxygen and breathing when you're stuck in an elevator, and all of a sudden you have a feeling of being claustrophobic and you feel like, it is disrupting you. But most days, day in, day out, this is where you need to take your hat off to the people who sacrifice their and also dedicate and committed in their profession to work on board ships and carry ships, and also people who work at ports and along the logistics supply chain to facilitate that. And obviously, in terms of what I mentioned earlier, go back to what I mentioned earlier about shipping being a mirror of world development, because it is, like I said, a servant of global trade. If you can just wrap your head around that, it's quite easy for you to connect the dots. You would think that there is a lot of separating dots between shipping and world affairs, but actually they are very closely intertwined, because whatever happens, for example, in one part, because of the interconnectedness of a global economy, thanks to globalization, and also how closely related ports are, whatever happens in one part of the world will definitely have a domino effect on the other. So things like tariff war, for example, now countries are imposing a protectionist policy. Ports are denying certain types of ships from coming in due to port state control, or maybe because of emission rules, and also designation of some countries as problematic countries, high risk cargo come in. So all this certainly will have an effect down the supply chain.
You mentioned something quite important there about the people the professionals who actually work on these vessels, right? We talk a lot about ships, we talk a lot about infrastructure and ports, but actually there are a whole host of people who operate vessels and machinery and provisioning for the ships, the seafarers. So let's talk a little bit about them. What is it like? What is life like for seafarers today? particularly in this world of conflict and longer routes and tighter security.
Right. Well, I've never been on ship myself. Maybe I'm a little bit of a so
You don't have good sea legs.
Yeah. But I can vouch for the fact that seafarers, if it was up to me, I would nominate them for Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, they cannot be applauded enough for their invisible but pivotal role in facilitating global trade. As I mentioned earlier, no shipping, no shopping, right? And the fact that it is already a very hard environment.
Is it a hard life?
I mean, if you think working in an office is tough, try to work in a big metal that floats around and also subject to all kinds of temperamental nature, high waves, and also bad weather and so on. And the job that they have to do on board of ship is not exactly walk in the park. And then there is increasing pressure on them to sail longer. Some are being denied shore leave. Some do not have adequate rest. There is even cases of bullying on ships, and also poor compensation, salary being paid late, and those kind of things. So, we always talk about, how impressive and how big vessels are becoming, how complicated and how sophisticated they have become. But, little, thought is given to the plight of the seafarers. So, of course, we have to hand it to associations and also governments who are putting some attention and focusing on attention on their plight. But I think more needs to be done. There's also issues such as criminalization of seafarers. One very famous case involving two captains from India who were manning a ship and collided with a ship in South Korea. And they were tried in Korean courts. And apparently, again, it's not to say anything bad about South Korea, but the long and short of it, they went to jail, and there was a big hue and cry about how unfair the trial was, because the ship that they hit was anchored in the middle of a busy route along a river, and obviously, and the ship, belonged to a chaebol, which is a very powerful Korean company.
Right. So is this an industry? So seafarers, is it an industry where there is concern that there could be a manpower crunch? Is this an industry where talent and supply of talent is in short supply?
It is, because, obviously being a seafarer is not regarded by youths as a very sexy and a very attractive career prospect.
Is it not a young...
Look around. I mean, people who are school leavers would rather, quickly join to become a cabin crew member in airlines rather than go on board of a ship. And if you tell your parents you're going to go work on board ship, they'll probably just roll their eyes and say, "You're out of your mind," right? So it doesn't have that kind of, I would say, attraction or like I said, the attraction is not quite there. But and it is actually not a coincidence that many of the world's seafarers come from rather underdeveloped economy, and this is not to say bad things about countries which supply most of the seafarers of the world, like Philippines, Ukraine, Myanmar, Indonesia, and so on. But just look at the names of this country I just mentioned, and you can see what they have in common. They are countries in which wages are low, exactly.
Like maybe less developed countries,
right, exactly.
Which brings up the concern of whether seafarers are sufficiently protected, right? Whether they're being exploited, and that are some of the issues that you raised. Yeah. I also wanted to talk to you about another threat, and the threat that kind of looms over us in an age of technology and AI. When ships are becoming more important and more connected, they might also become more vulnerable. Talk to me about cyber threats.
Oh, I see.
And how serious is that in the shipping industry right now? Are we talking about just nuisance attacks, or could these threats be real jeopardy, could shut down ports, could really disrupt supply chains?
Yeah. That and much more, Mel. As we all know, that the advent of Industry 4.0 with all the technologies such as blockchain, AI, and so on, making things more interconnected. And ships are getting, there's even a concept called digital ships, whereby ships are no longer obviously using the so-called traditional brick and mortar ways of navigation, but everything is satellite-based, AI-based, reams and reams of data, which are all parked in cyberspace. So obviously, given the increasing immersion and adoption of digitalization in the maritime industry, and the fact that every party along the supply chain interconnected, shows that there is also a greater exposure to cyber threats.
Digital ships. So are ships still manned? Are they,
some, yes,
could they be autonomous?
They are already testing some autonomous ships, as a matter of
Really?
fact. So this is something which, to me, is almost inevitable. But there's a lot of hurdles that need to be cleared. For example, insurance, in terms of risk management, who will be responsible for the liability part of it in case something goes wrong. In terms of security of a ship. An autonomous ship were to be hijacked, but who's going to be responsible for security and so on. So all these things are actually being hotly debated in the industry. But just like when the first autonomous cars appeared,
a lot of issues.
And a lot of exactly, a lot of
see.
fear of the unknown. So once I think they have developed technology which is or secured enough and also can allay all the fears, especially from the insurance perspective, I think it's all systems go. I mean, there's no turning the tide on AI and autonomous vehicles.
I like that plan. Let's circle back to Malaysia. So we've circled the globe essentially with global shipping. Let's come back closer to home. When you think about Malaysia and Malaysia's port capacity and what we're doing here, how would you describe our capacity to compete? You said we're in the top 10 busiest ports, right? What are we trying to achieve with our shipping goals?
Okay. So as you know, Malaysia is a trade-dependent country. I mean, we are really punching above our weight as a trading country. For a country our size, it's quite remarkable that we've always been consistently rated, ranked in the top 20 most active trading nations. And not only in terms of commodities, but also manufactured goods and so on. And our trade has exceeded for a couple of years now above 1 trillion ringgit. And there's a huge number of containers being processed through our ports, and our ports continue to break records in terms of the containers handled and so on. And this will continue as our economy grows, and again, barring a major incidents such as COVID, the numbers are projected to grow bigger and bigger. And this calls for extra capacity in our ports. And only last year, Prime Minister announced that he would like to see the speeding up the third port in Port Klang in Pulau Keri to complement the two existing terminals at Port Klang, namely Westport and Northport, in order to support greater trade. And also during the time of the election in Sabah, he also launched together with the Yang Tuan Agong a Maharani Energy Freeport in Muar to capitalize on oil tankers traversing through the Straits of Malacca. So this all points towards a greater need for huge capacity, better infrastructure, and also more capability of handling trade. Trade, which obviously means export and import.
You mentioned a bit earlier, China is the
Hainan
port. That's right.
Yes.
Is that a competition for Malaysia, or is that opportunity?
Well, I see Hainan as actually being a good thing, because it will not only further cement China's position as a major maritime player, but also there'll be a lot of spillover effects, which I believe can benefit some of our ports. As it stands, many of our ports are handling a lot more transshipment cargo, which means transit cargoes as opposed to domestic indigenous cargo. And many of these so-called intra-ASEAN cargo originates and are en route to China. So with more cargo coming out from Hainan, with its free port status and the fact that it will attract more manufacturers, OEMs who will produce goods which will be exported through Hainan port, and some of them will find a way here. So I think we will win. But what we need to do is to beef up infrastructure, scalable infrastructure, improve our productivity, our competitiveness, our efficiency, and also improve connectivity. Connectivity is key for ports in terms of the number of services that they have with other ports to tap into the growing cargo from Hainan.
Malaysia's maritime strategy, Nazery, are we focusing purely on it being a trade strategy, a transport strategy, a commercial strategy? Are we thinking of it from a security, a national security strategy? Because we've seen how geopolitics can really change shipping routes, can really disrupt global shipping. Are we thinking of it in that perspective?
Well, obviously, like I said earlier, being a demand-derived service, shipping is almost at the mercy of economic activities, production, consumption, business, industries. And so for as long as our economy continues to flourish, for as long as there's manufacturing activities, we continue to export our commodities like palm oil, oil, gas, and so on, there will always be a need for ports. And as long as the numbers grow, the export grow, and also our import grow to cater to growing business and industry activity, growing demand for consumers, because domestic consumption is also a very important engine of growth for the country.
Would you say the Straits of Malacca is a secure channel?
Well, so far it is. We don't see any presence of any rebels. Of course, there is the odd piracy attacks and so on, but it is considered as in terms of maritime studies what is known as a sea line of communication, which is a busy sea line facilitating global trade with some choke points, because the narrowest point in the Straits of Malacca is barely about 1 kilometer. So God forbid if, for example, an oil tanker were to spill
like the Panama
cargo,
Canal.
yeah, exactly, and that can cause quite a disastrous chain of effect to shipping flow from northbound and southbound, and also cross-trade. Bear in mind that there's also a lot of barter trade going on between the west coast of Peninsular Malaysia and also the east coast of Sumatra. And this has been going on for millennia, because the trading of barter trade, beras, tobacco, tobacco.
I didn't realize it was that narrow, 1 kilometer across that narrow. Thank you so much for coming on the show and talking a little bit about what we're expecting in 2026 in terms of global shipping. So thanks for sharing your insights.
All right, thank you.
That's all the time we have for you on this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching, and good night.